you know, the sloppy Joe of Philly
Okay.
cheesesteaks.
We're playing Horizon Zero Dawn, and she's like, "What is this about?" Going back to the burger part. Hey everybody, welcome back to Bread and Burgers, and this is a random pickle, right? We talked about it in a few episodes before. These are just kind of our random thoughts, and one of us, Jonas or myself, will throw a question to the other person, and see how to get the conversation going. And our original vision of not only Random Pickle but Bread and Burgers as well is that it's about burgers and everything life. So then there's something about burgers, but then there's also other things about life, and we kind of talked about it sometimes, in our normal episodes, how we're doing, what games we're playing. And so today in Random Pickle, it's gonna be like that. It's gonna be about life, and so get ready for it, and get ready for this, Jonas. Now, spoiler alerts for those. Again, it's a game it's been a long time. That's been out for a long time. But Horizon Zero Dawn, I've been immersed in that for a while. Past few weeks, I just checked my statistics. I played 60 hours. I'm sorry, I don't know where my time went. I should be spending it with my daughter. But Horizon Zero Dawn. Spoiler alert. It talks about kind of this post-humanity, apocalyptic. A world that was once overrun by an AI, right?
Okay.
And then it destroyed humanity, and then for the most part, destroyed humanity, and then humanity flourished again and started to kind of fight back. Now, so my question to you, Jonas, what do you think? What's your initial impression about artificial intelligence, or are you for it? Are you against it? Are you worried about it? What is your thought?
I think I definitely really enjoy the idea of artificial intelligence in the sense of like being able to create something that kind of thinks on its own, is able to develop on its own. And I think that's always really fascinating because it's the idea of being able to essentially create life, right? There's something unique, I think, that everyone finds appealing about AI in that it's you're trying to be very lifelike. And this is true even beyond the Horizon Zero Dawn sort of universe, right? You see kind of there's always kind of a both and to it, right? There's always the robots that are trying to kill you, for better or
Always.
for worse, right? Like, we can go the Isaac Asimov where route with iRobot, where it's essentially we tell the robots like, hey, you're supposed to do what's good, and the robot basically says like, well, humans are bad, so the good thing would be to eradicate all of them, in kind of summary. Or you can go like the Matrix, and there's a lot of these, but also on the same kind of wavelength, like there are different ideas where like, well, robots are just like people and they're just looking to be treated like people, right? And
Like Spielberg's AI, if you will.
sure,
Or even the Animatrix, kind of precursor to the Matrix of, it's because humans treated robots so badly, that's why they rebelled and then started to,
Sure.
become like evil.
And one of the biggest places that I see it definitely is is in the Mass Effect series, where in the trilogy there is a whole arc, there's a whole race of sentient machines. I mean, you're fighting against the super race of sentient machines, but there is a whole other race of sentient machines that you can decide, like, are they really people? Essentially, do they have souls? And I think in that regards, like, that's kind of where I would approach the idea of AI is if AI truly is AI, and it in the sense that it is completely man-made, right? In that using that as the definition of artificial, then I think imaginatively we can imagine, right, like, robots taking over the world and usurping their human overlords kind of thing. But I kind of have a lot of reservations about the idea that we as humans can impart souls into a machine.
Okay, well, and again, it's partly because your worldview consists of not only the behaviorist kind of mentality where there is, well, if you act like a human and you walk like a human and you think even like a human, then you're a human, right? There's a deeper meaning of what constitutes humanity there. Yeah, I like so before I kind of dive into that part of our discussion though, I think being in tech for such a long time, and even my first major job, at a kind of a big car company, there was friends and colleagues that were researching on machine learning and kind of artificial intelligence, and that's because they wanted to enhance the how we interact with our machines. For example, they want it to be, when we sit in the car, they know exactly where where you're going to go because they learn your patterns, your driving patterns, or your schedule, your rhythm. A lot of people would say that humans are very pattern oriented or predictable. And so therefore you can have these data points and train your machine in order for it to do that. That's kind of the premise of machine learning, right? That if you initially kind of seed it with some models and then it kind of adapts and iterates, then it's going to start learning more and more. But it's one thing for that, for machine learning to be in that in that realm, and it's other thing for machines or software to be sentient. Because then you have to define what sentient is, and I think the HBO series Westworld is one of the recent quintessential. What does it mean for a machine to be sentient, to be alive, and it's a tough question or tough nut to crack there. Think so?
Yeah, I definitely think that's the case, and even more so than to just be like alive is the question of like what does it mean to fundamentally be, I guess, human, right? And it comes to this idea of, and I think part of it comes with this idea of we tend to anthropomorphize more things than we admit, right? Like we do this with animals already, right? We don't like the whole idea of like we impart human emotions to our pets, to our dogs and our cats, right? They're sorry or they're happy to see me or whatever it is, right? But do they really have that sort of emotion, or do they even understand it in the way that we think they do? So yeah, I agree. It's the sort of the sense of like you either, in order to close that gap, you either have to give robots something, like give machines something that they don't inherently have, or you kind of have to undersell kind of humanity, right? Like the whole idea of AIs becoming more human through kind of machine learning sort of tells us that like it sort of projects this idea of humanity, and that like mastery of specific tasks or thought patterns is all there is to being human.
Yeah. I mean, if the basic definition of how do you define something as sentient is that it thinks for itself, then that line is hard, because everything that thinks, everything that acts based on whatever input it is, and then retools itself to behave in kind of that way, becomes human or become sentient, right? But it's weird because we never think about that. We think about, oh well, robots, I mean, machines are becoming sentient, they're becoming alive. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're better than humans, right? You have your animals. The animals think for themselves too. That, hey, I'm hungry, or my cat is hungry, it scratches my door. The behavior and its thoughts, kind of combine together. Even plants, right? You say, oh well, I'm not saying plants think, don't get me wrong there, but I mean, like, what I'm saying is their behavior would model, based on, their needs and whatnot. So as in, hey, I'm not getting enough sun, so I'm actually kind of tend to grow that way towards the sunlight. I've seen that from, my house plants too. Like, then do plants think? Plants versus zombies. Do plants think? It's a difficult question. One, and two, I think that a lot of times when we think about like killer robots and AI that try to usurp humanity, we automatically assume that robots or machines are better than humans, that they're more capable, that they are more long lasting, if you will, able to surpass kind of death. So we always think about, oh well, machines or post-humanism is this, we're out of our fleshly shells and kind of onto this more non-carbon based life forms,
Yeah.
metal, whatnot.
Yeah, and I think like there is certain merit to it in the sense of it is an acknowledgement of human limitations, right? Particularly physically. There physically we have a lot of limitations, and we see this even in just the animal kingdom, right? Like, physically, I would rather be like a cheetah or something, right? But the idea behind it is that, like, are we reducing humans to less than what they are? When we say like, oh, these machines have surpassed humanity. Yeah, they're made out of stronger materials, and they process information faster and that sort of thing. But again, like, is that all there is? Like, is calculations and like heavy lifting all there is to being human? In
That's interesting, because if you think about it, like, actually a lot of things surpass humans, right?
Right.
Dolphins, for example, can be underwater for a long, long time, and humans cannot. And so there are aspects of a dolphin that surpasses, humans. And for example, like, in terms of offspring survival rates, any type of any type of animal that can have multiple litters, and not only mammalian but even like reptiles and whatnot can have multiple offspring. So in that regard, technically they are surpassing humans or better than humans, right? So what makes machines kind of this next quintessential like post-humanity kind of image, right? It's hard.
It's fascinating because what we've done is we've taken something kind of artificial and imbued a life to it, and I think this goes back to just sort of our kind of our anthropomorphic sort of tendencies of imparting very human attributes to non-human things. I think the difference between AI and like animal life is that there's this innate recognition that animal life came from somewhere else, right? We had no part in the creation of animal life, regardless of sort of whatever creation theory that you subscribe to, right? Like, humans didn't really do anything to create at least non-human life as we know it. Whereas AI, it's something very much like that. But what I think we fail to recognize is that in our interactions with just kind of non-human things, right? Like, what makes AI scary, or what makes AI seem so great, is actually the humanness that we put into it, right? And so machines are scary when they can do things that a person could do, right? When they replace people. And you actually see this in the sense of like, even in these sort of like science fiction sort of narratives, right? Like aliens or AI, whatever it is, there is a very, like, it's maybe a dark and a dark and sort of obscure human aspect, but it is still a very human aspect that is what makes them like scary. Like to think of like, oh, this is how I would like trap these people and kill all of them, sort of thing. And we really think about it, like that's actually a very human thing to think, right? If they were really as alien from us as we perceive them to be, like then you know, we don't have that point of like kind of connection or reference. And at least that's kind of how I look at it.
So I guess what you're saying is we are worried about killer AI or killer robots because we think that they are going to be more human than us, if you will,
Sort
or
of.
at least in some ways that they would replace, you know, our you know, replace us, replace humanity, because they think they're going to be better than us, or at least in some ways do everything that we can,
Like
and then some.
there's a very like human aspect of it, right? We essentially assume them to be human, and that's why they're going to beat us, right? And so in that sense, right, it's the idea of you know, they are, you know, AI, I'm just a human and I have a certain number of, I think what makes humanity, right, in a very general sense, without getting into any sort of deep philosophical discussion, in a general sense, what makes humans unique is, right, like so a lot of people say like tool making, right? And so what AI becomes is it becomes a human with better tools. So I'm here with, right, like if I use like an Avengers kind of reference, right, like here I am, I'm Hawkeye with like my fancy bow and arrow, right, and this pretty cool tool. I can beat a bunch of bad guys with it. And then, you know, someone shows up in an Iron Man suit, like that's a better tool. So
Someone that can learn all the moves of the Avengers, like the Taskmaster. Oh,
sure. I mean, like but the whole idea behind it is, right, like there's this human impulse that's driving it, as opposed to, right, like, and so what makes AI scary in the sense of like, well, what if it was just like a human being, except now it has all of these tools at its disposal, right? Like Ultron is essentially, right, like the whole story behind like Ultron is like they tried to put a human brain into like a robot, and the whole iRobot thing kind of happened. And so there's this humanity, and yeah, there is a logic that humans can come to, but because this robot maybe, like, you know, there's always a story plot where it's like this robot still doesn't consider itself human, but it has a lot of these human attributes. And I think it's these human attributes that are what would make like a rogue AI really scary.
yeah, you know, and ultimately, I think it's we kind of like barely touched on, you know, this topic, right, of artificial intelligence and killer robots and whatnot, and what defines humanity. But you know, it seems like it's also in opening a Pandora's box, you know. And maybe next time in the next episode we can talk about this a little bit, where there are some leading researchers in you know, in the field of artificial intelligence and whatnot, are cautioning, you know, like don't go too far, right? As in, like, you know, like for example, like if you're in biotechnology, don't go too far and start cloning people, or in, you know, virology, don't go too far and create you know, killer viruses, right? Even in the same field, like in AI, don't go too far, because, you know, AI is going to overrun humanity. And so there's a lot of that aspect, and we can see some of that play out in terms of like automatic like paper or news generation, you know, kind of AIs.
Sure.
You know, so there's a lot of aspect about you know, artificial intelligence that should scare us. But I think today we kind of just touched on kind of humanity, you know, aspect of it. Maybe we just, you know, we should be worried about machine learning or artificial intelligence that is trying to, you know, there's with human qualities, I suppose.
Yeah, I think inherently, and kind of close on this, is like my take on that would be that it's not a, like, there is a sense like we can create tools that we can't control, like we're incapable of handling, and you know, and maybe there is a distinction between that, like, you know, did we create something with life and therefore malicious intent against us, or is it just something like we are we went too far in the sense of like we created something we're unable to handle, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I created this vehicle that is monstrous in its destruction, and I didn't install like a sufficient braking system.
Which is exactly what Horizon Zero Dawn is talking about, right? But yeah. I mean, it again, a lot of this guy's kind of world building. A
Hmm.
lot of different kind of threads in there. About artificial intelligence, and even what is it? How do we define humanity? But yeah, it's an interesting topic that I think. Um, I'm not saying not many people talk about, or maybe some people will think, why is this relevant to me, right? But if you think about it, there are so many games and movies and TV shows that talk about this post-human or killer robots kind of thing that it's actually in our culture right now.
Hmm.
So what do you think, our viewers and our listeners? What do you think about your thoughts about killer AIs or just artificial intelligence in general? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Let us know. This is a random pickle. We just talk about random pickle burgers and everything life, the life part of it, and we like to hear what you think and kind of get a conversation going.
Hopefully.
Are we not see, even this intro is not rehearsed enough. So don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and also just listen to our podcast. And again, maybe this is too random for you. Go back and enjoy our burger talks, and just imagine that you're sitting on a wonderful island with no killer robots, and enjoying that awesome, wonderful burger.
Sounds good. And see you guys
Yeah.
around.
See ya.